Hello and welcome to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. This is Ralph Valenti. For news, reviews, and conversations on all things pro wrestling, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. Another Wednesday in the books. We had the AEW Dynamite Go Home show for Revolution, and we also have a big main event on NXT, which featured Charlotte Flair and Biana Belair. How did that affect the ratings, Ralph? Well, AEW won the ratings yet again, but for the first time since the Wednesday Night Wars have started, they swept the demographics. Every demographic that is reported by Nielsen and you see on ShowBuzzDaily.com, AEW won. So they won 0.30 to 0.23 in the 18 to 49 demographic. Total viewership was 865,000 for AEW, 717,000 for NXT. Both were down in the ratings. Both were down in total viewership. But again, we have this big news that AEW swept for the first time. Let's talk about each show, though, Ralph. AEW Dynamite, we'll start with that one first, leading off with the highlights of the show. What do you think was the highlight of AEW Dynamite?
I think without question, the best segment between NXT and probably Dynamite was the Iron Man match. And I think that for a number of reasons. One of the first things was it was a 30-minute match, and they managed to captivate me, not only me, but I think a good majority of the fan base throughout the entirety of the match. This was, to me, a very important match because many people have criticized, or people have certainly become more vocal and open to the idea that, maybe Kenny Omega isn't necessarily at the level that people were kind of holding him to, because he does have the nickname, the best bout machine. Many people call him one of the very best in the world. I consider him one of the best in the world, as do you. But there is I guess you could call it this little subsect of professional wrestling fan base that doesn't necessarily believe that. And I think that this match, being that it was a 30-minute Iron Man match, was really his opportunity to go out there with another guy that is, another skilled, athletic professional wrestler, and for them to prove that they are more than capable of delivering. And I think they did in a big way.
I agree. I think this was both PAC and Kenny Omega's best match in AEW. I mean, they went almost 40 minutes, nonstop action, and it wasn't like too spotty. There were big spots, but it wasn't like how we usually see in AEW where it was like spot. Everything had a reason for it, and PAC did a really good job targeting the head and neck area for the brutalizer at the end. I did like the disqualification with the chair shot. He was willing to give up a fall for getting future falls for himself and his own benefit. I like that. I do like the finish where the brutalizer was there, but the time ran out. PAC got pissed off, knocked down Paul Turner. Aubrey Edwards comes in, and Omega gets the victory. So I was all good with that. I thought Kenny Omega's selling was awesome throughout this match. PAC was awesome with all his spots, the shooting star press through the table, the Falcon arrow onto the floor. Just everything looked good and it looked smooth. I mean, very good Iron Man match.
I thought it was a very hard-hitting, aggressive match. I enjoyed a good majority of it. I think some of the people who are critical of Kenny Omega and some of his mannerisms throughout a wrestling match can certainly point to this match and point to certain spots and say that, it's a little over the top. Mm-hmm. A couple spots stick out to mind. The one that's probably most notable, which was actually even called out by Jim Ross, was where he kind of even let his eyes roll in back of his head and he kind of looked constipated. But if you remember that part of the match, I think
that was when PAC, I forgot exactly what he did, but he did land on his head and
I think it might have been the reverse. He was going for the one-winged angel, and if I'm correct, he reversed it into the reverse Rana.
Yeah.
And then, anyway, either way, this match delivered in a big way.
It really did.
It had high expectations because of the two people involved in it. And I agree with you. I think this is certainly Kenny Omega's best match since coming to AEW. And I think that he proved a lot of the doubters wrong and showed what he's certainly capable of.
And the other thing, too, that I think the commentary did a great job with was telling the story outside the ring with the Young Bucks being in Omega's corner, not Hangman Page.
Yeah.
And, of course, we got the interview segment afterwards that I thought it was a very good segment. A lot of people liked it as well, where we got the exchange from the Young Bucks and Hangman Page arguing about why Hangman feels out of place with the Elite. And then you have Kenny out there trying to play peacemaker, like, guys, it's just a business. It's a friendly competition. Yeah. But the Bucks are like, listen, Hangman, you were a jobber in Ring of Honor. We brought you into the Bullet Club, and now you're a star here in AEW, thanks to us. And I'm very interested to see what happens Saturday night. Yeah. Like, who's going to turn on who, and how does this all turn out? So I'm very excited for that. After the Iron Man match, though, a little interesting. Tony Schiavone tries to interview PAC, and the line of questioning that PAC was getting, he didn't like, thought he was being called a joke. So of all people to come out and confront PAC, it's Orange Cassidy. Mm-hmm. Orange Cassidy stands toe-to-toe with PAC, and PAC knocks him out. And we learn later in the night that Saturday night, we're getting PAC versus Orange Cassidy.
Yep. It's going to make for an interesting dynamic, especially because PAC is a guy who takes himself so seriously, and that's just the nature of that character that he portrays and plays. Or, maybe it's even how he really is in real life. I don't know. And then on the other side, you have literally the polar opposite of him. You have Orange Cassidy, the guy who literally seems to take nothing seriously, the guy who play kicks.
But he's going to try on Saturday, according to Chuck Taylor. He's going to try.
And that's the thing. Like, this is going to be the first testing the waters. And it's a big spot because it's happening on a pay-per-view. So I'm going to imagine that 99% of the fan base that's going to pay for the pay-per-view are going to enjoy this simply because of the dynamic between the two. Now, the thing is, how much of the fan base or potential fan base beyond the current AEW fan base is willing to accept something like that?
I know we talked about that before, with what Cornette has said, and we did a whole episode on the polarizing character of Orange Cassidy. And I think a lot of people that know Orange Cassidy outside of AEW know the guy can wrestle.
Right.
But however, those that only see him in AEW are going to be like, wait, this guy's play kicking. How is this going to work in wrestling? And it might turn out to be a laugh in the face. But for those that haven't seen Orange Cassidy outside of AEW, I highly suggest David Starr versus Orange Cassidy, because I think that's the approach that this match is going to have Saturday with PAC.
Yeah, especially because PAC, like I said, such a hard-hitting style, such a serious approach. He's literally the perfect opponent, I think, right now that can go against a guy like Orange Cassidy. And I have no doubt in my mind that the fans that are going to be in attendance are going to eat this up, and that it's going to make for a cool environment. If that is able to extend beyond the AEW fan base remains to be seen. But this is, to me, the first testing of the waters with Orange Cassidy to get him to appeal to the masses.
I agree. And I'm excited for the match itself. I'm excited for the podcasts that are going to review it, including ours, and even what Jim Cornette's going to say, because he's going to review it. My Little Dog Pockets against the Bastard PAC is going to be fun. But yes, Revolution is this Saturday. This was a go-home show, and I do have one low light for this episode, and that is one of your marquee matches is Cody versus MJF, and the only thing we got was a video package.
Yeah.
That, to me, was very, very bad.
Yeah.
If I'm AEW, Cody and MJF are two of your biggest stars in one of your biggest matches at Revolution. You need to have something in person with those two. A video package. You can't have a video package on the go-home segment. Maybe they should have switched the video package for last week and put the steel cage match this week. Yeah. But to have neither one of them on the show, that to me was a little something that they should have not had.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people were kind of praising this as a great go-home show. I think that the fact that the Iron Man match was as good as it was, and the fact that some people thought the weigh-in was very good, I think that kind of carried over and led people to feel that it was a good go-home show. I thought it was just okay, and that was kind of my low light. I felt like as hot as a angle as the steel cage match was last week, I felt like they missed the opportunity to really drive that match home, especially because if you think of it this way, look, let's imagine you're somebody who hasn't necessarily watched AEW, but you saw the highlights, you saw it on YouTube, you saw the buzz, and maybe you watched the match, and maybe you're intrigued, and now maybe you want to watch AEW Dynamite just to see Cody and MJF have some type of interaction. You didn't get that. You got the video package, and I agree. I think there should have been some type of segment, some type of in-person back and forth. I don't know if it would be a contract signing. I can't quite put my finger on what I feel it should be, but I think they missed out on a big opportunity of promoting one of the bigger feuds, especially on this card. Right now, you got Cody, who is probably the most over face in all of professional wrestling, coming off a hot angle, coming off a hot match, something that's been widely talked about, not just for AEW fans, but in wrestling in general. And they didn't necessarily capitalize on that, in my opinion.
Perhaps they should have done the 10 lashings here. Maybe, in hindsight, think, maybe not the steel cage, because that could have been the first thing. All right, you got through the steel cage, but can you go through the 10 lashings? And both segments were awesome. The steel cage match was good. The 10 lashing segment was arguably the best segment AEW's ever produced. Mm-hmm. If you had that as a go-home angle, my God.
Yeah.
And,
I agree. And then my other small gripe, too, I think a lot of people were kind of into the weigh-in thing. I personally was not, and the reason I say that...
Really?
I did not like it. And the reason I don't like it is this. So I know why people are saying they liked it. And when we talked about it quick, you said you think it makes it feel like it's a more realistic sports feel to it, a more realistic approach, which I'm certainly more than willing to accept that. But the problem I have with it is this. So the reason they have weigh-ins is because you have to meet a certain weight in a professional sport in order to compete. Professional wrestling, especially in AEW, knowing that they only have right now one weight class where it's the heavyweight championship or there's no other singles competitions.
True.
It's kind of this arbitrary segment just to do something different other than a contract signing, other than something else. So to me, it's almost like they were kind of out there. It was supposed to be serious, but it definitely didn't have a serious feel. Moxley's on the scale with his shirt off, but he's got an eye patch on and it looks kind of goofy. I like the stuff that followed it, like the runouts. I enjoyed that. I think that Darby Allin coming out, I think they should have saved just that run out for that one spot rather than the two. Dustin coming out, I thought that was good. I liked everything after the weigh-in part of it, but I felt like the weigh-in was just kind of like put there to be something different, to give it a legitimate feel, but I don't think it really made that match any more legitimate.
Well, I look at it as two ways. One, usually when we see a segment like this for a go-home angle, it's usually the contract signing that ends up in a pull-apart brawl, which we've seen countless times in WWE. This was something different. It's basically the same approach, but something different. I understand what you're saying, that the weigh-in kind of makes no sense when there's only one weight class, but what is the biggest criticism with Jericho right now?
His weight and his appearance.
Right. So,
which would be another reason for me, like, why would you want to expose our
but that's the point. Like, he is trying to gain heat by trying to avoid being weighed. So he's stalling, and then goes on the mic and says Aaron Mahomes instead of Patrick Mahomes.
Yep.
That whole thing, getting all this heat, and then he ends up still not weighing in. So now people are going to be like, well, how much does he weigh? Is he healthy? Is he just, worried about his body or whatnot? So I don't mind it from that aspect. There's a story there where he's gaining heat from avoiding being weighed in because he might be self-conscious of his weight.
No, I get it.
And everything else afterwards. And I think JR had his best line since he started on AEW. The day of Dippin' Dots didn't do anything to you. That was so funny.
Yeah. And, like I said, I think that I'm probably in the minority. I think a lot of people did enjoy this segment. I just felt like it was a little tongue-in-cheek. It wasn't as serious for a feud that seems like it was kind of really bad blood and at each other's throats. And I thought they could have done something different to make it a little better. But
maybe. At
least they tried something different, which is always good.
Right. Overall, I still thought it was a good show. But now let's move over to NXT really quick here. A lot of matches on this card. We had Dijakovic and Cameron Grimes, Xia Li, and Mia Yim. We had Bianca Belair and Charlotte Flair. Couple talking segments with Finn Balor, and we had Tomasso Ciampa and Austin Theory. Overall, I thought it was a good show. Highlight for me, though, was the Finn Balor segment.
Yep.
Finn Balor comes out and he's basically like, listen, I've done everything. I've won in Japan. I've won in WWE, a Universal Champion, Intercontinental Champion, former NXT Champion. Who's the next guy to get the rub that Matt Riddle had, that Gargano had, that Dragunov had? And all of a sudden we see Fabian and Eichner come out. My God. Yep. Walter versus Balor. Sign me up. Take my money. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm a big fan of the smaller guy working against the bigger guy because it usually makes.
Yep.
Especially a guy like Walter. I think I like the way that they're managing to incorporate some of the NXT UK guys into the mix with the NXT guys here in the States. So I'm all for that match. I'm not going to complain about that one whatsoever.
To me, when that match happens, hopefully it's at TakeOver and they don't use this as a way to, have some payoff on NXT. I would love, I think that's going to be like a Tyler Bate versus Walter-esque match where it goes like 40 minutes and Walter just slaps the hell out of his chest. It's going to be, I'm so excited for it whenever that match happens. But to me though, the downfall of this, the show starts off with two matches that both end in screwy finishes. Damien Priest attacks Dominik Dijakovic, interferes, and ends up eventually costing Dijakovic the match that Cameron Grimes wins with a surprise victory. Then afterwards, the next segment, Mia Yim loses after getting distracted by Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez for Xia Li to get the victory in back-to-back matches. So to me, I didn't like that. And also the fact that we already have a steel cage match for next week, Tegan Nox versus Dakota Kai. And, we have another one announced for the same week, Velveteen Dream against Roddy Strong. So it's like they're rinse, lather, repeat in the same episodes. And I'm not liking that.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that, and I think that probably for me the low light or the low point of the show is the continuing of the Velveteen Dream and Roddy Strong feud right now. It's a feud that I was hoping that with the Velveteen Dream coming back, he'd really be, the fans would be much more into him. And granted, he's always going to have a good performance. He never really has a bad match, but it just seems like this was kind of thrown together for really no particular reason.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're throwing in another cage match, which, who's going to complain about two cage matches, but something's just not clicking with the feud.
Right.
So.
And what about your highlight? I don't think we went over your highlight.
My highlight would be Belair and Charlotte Flair. I thought that was a really good match. And like I said, last week, Bianca Belair continues to shine and grow more and more confident. Crowd was certainly behind her. Charlotte Flair, like I said last week as well, she's kind of got that whole Roman Reigns feel to her where it's kind of like people feel like she's getting pushed down their throat. So naturally people are going to root for whoever. Right. So it helps elevate a character like Belair. So I thought that match was much better than I actually thought it would be.
I thought the match was very good. The ending was a little botchy and a little clunky towards the end. And honestly, I wasn't a fan of what happened afterwards where Charlotte's attacking Bianca Belair, giving her, chair shots to the leg, figure eight. Then all of a sudden Rhea Ripley's music comes and she's doing her whole entrance like she's about to start a match. It's like, are you coming in for the save or are you coming here to do a song and dance? Like, where's the sense of urgency? Mm-hmm. And if I'm Bianca Belair, if she's coming in for the save, I'm like, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. It just seemed very odd.
I agree.
For that. So overall, what do you think was the better show?
Well, I think that the Iron Man match was the best match between the two shows. I actually thought as a whole NXT was better. The reason I say that is because I felt like Dynamite, this was a big show for them. It was the go-home show, and aside from the Iron Man match, there were a couple spots here and there. I think the sit-down interview was okay. The weigh-in, like I talked about, I didn't necessarily like that. The fact that Cody and MJF weren't on there, I didn't like that at all. So while I didn't think Dynamite was bad, I thought that it could have delivered in a much better way given the significance of the show leading into a pay-per-view. I don't think it did that. I know that there's a countdown show that was on following Dynamite that supposedly was very good and would really help sell the pay-per-view, but like I tell you all the time, when I watch Dynamite to me, that's your opportunity to sell me on a pay-per-view. almost 1 million people watch Dynamite, probably more, but 1 million based on the viewership that's actually counted. That's your opportunity to sell those people on purchasing your pay-per-view, right? And it shouldn't be where you have to go out of your way to be sold on something.
Right.
You shouldn't have to watch the show following Dynamite. You shouldn't have to watch Being the Elite to understand the significance of a storyline. That's your opportunity. You got 2 hours to sell me, sell me. And to me, Dynamite, while I'm going to purchase it either way, if you're on the fence, I'm not convinced that anyone was pushed it into purchasing the pay-per-view. So to me, NXT was, well, it wasn't great. It was better.
I disagree. I think AEW Dynamite was the better show, hands down. I think both shows had very good wrestling matches. Whether it was AEW Dynamite with the Iron Man match or
Marco Stunt.
That one was a little chaotic. I'll admit, when Bryce Remsburg is refereeing, that always happens. But the tag team match after that, Best Friends versus Butcher and the Blade, I thought was a good match. I would have liked Butcher and the Blade to get a win. The Fatal 4-Way women's match was pretty good. NXT on their hand, Dijakovic and Grimes was good. Xia Li and Mia Yim was good. Ciampa and Theory for their small time was good. And obviously they delivered in the main event, I think, as well. But I think the segments were just a little bit better for AEW, so I say they were the better show. Now, I think we could agree which show was not better than both of those shows, and that was Super Showdown.
I didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing yet.
I don't think you need to. And we're
I
not
know
going
what everyone's pissed off about.
We're not reviewing the show. We just are going to talk about what the hell happened at the end, because the internet wrestling community as a whole hated what happened.
What else is new?
Goldberg beats The Fiend in 3 minutes and 30 seconds after 3 spares and a terrible jackhammer to become the new Universal Champion. I'm sorry. This is indefensible. This is terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Yeah. I'm not going to say I don't feel like The Fiend should be the champion, because I think he should be. And I think that he should get the opportunity to be in a big match at WrestleMania. But I also, while I don't think that having Goldberg as a champion is necessarily the greatest decision in the world, heading into WrestleMania season, I certainly see why and understand why. And that's the big difference. Like, you can make the emotional reaction like most people and go on social media and be pissed off about it, as most people would do. And even if Goldberg didn't win, you'd probably still find people that are going to complain about something just because it's WWE, because unfortunately, WWE, for all the reasons that we've talked about in the past, deserves all of the criticism that they get. And I'm not saying that they don't. But to me, when you're WWE, if you're Vince McMahon and you have all of these things, all these rumors going around about OTT streaming and advertising and wanting to sell potentially the rights to WrestleMania to be on ESPN or some type of other platform, you need to go with something that's a sure bet. Now, granted, Bill Goldberg, not necessarily the best worker in the world, never was, probably would admit that to anybody himself. Older, but the name is what's going to sell. And I'm not saying it will be the best match at WrestleMania, and I'm not saying that it's something that I'm necessarily interested in, but I mean, the name is what's going to sell people. And when you look at some of the, and let me just get this point across really quick, and I'll let you go on your thing here. When you look at some of the things that have happened over the course of the past year, everyone complained about Brock Lesnar being the champion. What happened? They took the belt off Brock Lesnar, right? And they put it on Seth Rollins. People, great, whether it was creative, whether it was Seth Rollins himself, whether it was the comments he made on social media, whether it was the comments he made about Kenny Omega, he got booed ultimately. Kofi Kingston, he was a champion. All of these things happened over the course of the year that were different from the status quo. Roman Reigns, people backlashed against that whole thing, right? We didn't get Roman Reigns pushed down our throat for a good long time, a good long period of time where he wasn't really elevated to those top level positions. You got Brock, who wasn't the champion anymore. All of that being said, viewership, ratings, stock, revenue, subscriptions, regardless of all of those things changing and all of the times that they listened to what the fans wanted, it didn't change anything. If I'm Vince McMahon, knowing that I've taken those risks, I need to go with what is a safe bet. Goldberg is safe. Cena is safe. Roman Reigns, for whatever people want to say about him, you can look it up. I think it's like the top 3 or 4 WrestleManias of all time that have, most purchase, most ticket sales. He's main evented a good majority of those. He needs to go with what's safe. This is the same reason why CM Punk wrestled The Undertaker at WrestleMania and The Rock was in the main event against Cena, because they need the names. They're not selling out 10,000 seat arenas. We're talking about football stadiums here. So to me, while I'm not saying I agree with it, I'm not defending it. I'm just stating this is why they do these things.
Here's where I get what you're trying to say, but at the same time, here's where it's wrong. Okay. The biggest knock in wrestling today is they don't have the next big star. They don't have the next. Who's the guy that's going to grab the brass ring and carry WWE to the next generation? Well, part of the reason is because they bring in all these part-timers, and then when the part-timers leave, they don't leave it in a better place. It's just like, oh, they went over and I'm done. Okay. This was the perfect opportunity to do this and have a star be made. Yeah. You have The Fiend beat Goldberg. Then he faces John Cena in the main event of WrestleMania, where the story is Cena wants 17. He wants to beat Ric Flair's record. The Fiend wants to avenge his loss because the whole Fiend character is based on what he remembers and things that were wrong in his career that he wants to right again. So you have him avenge his WrestleMania 30 loss to John Cena, which derailed his character in the beginning after he was hot at first. And that's your main event. And Cena, we know he could sell. And we know that Bray Wyatt is the most captivating character or most compelling character in WWE in the last 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
So why don't you just keep that momentum going? And that's your main event. Yeah. Instead, you put the belt on Goldberg, and the rumor main event now is Goldberg versus Roman Reigns. Now, what's the story for that? Spear versus Spear? Mm-hmm. That's what you're selling WrestleMania tickets for? That's what you're selling subscriptions for? That's what you're selling, possibly ESPN for? Spear versus Spear? Instead of the record chasing, instead of the avenge, instead of the most captivating character, who the hell's going to cut the promos to sell the freaking match between Roman and Goldberg? Well, they both can't talk.
First of all, I think Goldberg is a little underrated in his pro. He's not the worst, okay? He's certainly better than many other people. He's certainly better than Strowman, okay? So that there's that. But like I said, it's the names that are going to sell. It doesn't need to be.
Cena's a name. Cena sold tickets for 15 plus years with WWE.
I agree. And that's I mean, if you have if we look at WrestleMania right now, just look at the matches, look at the people involved. Let's assume you have Roman Reigns and you have Goldberg, you have Cena and The Fiend, and you have Undertaker and AJ, and
Brock and Drew. Those are probably the 4 marquee matches for Mania this year.
Even though people are pissed off right now with what happened, and I'm not saying that they're not justified, because they are. They're right to be upset for all the reasons you just talked about. WrestleMania is the biggest platform that they're going to have to really make a statement. All 4 of those guys can go over the relics of the past and say, this is the WWE making a statement. We are now going to look to the future. Now, are they going to do that? I don't know. I hope they do that. And like you said, a guy like Bray Wyatt, a guy who's been able to kind of build himself back up, especially a guy like The Fiend, I don't think he really loses all that much in this. Granted, right now, initial knee-jerk reaction, yeah, it sucks. Yeah, people are pissed off, but he's a great talker. He can go in the ring. The character's still going to be compelling. Everybody's like, oh, he's buried. Well, he was going to lose at some point. Granted, what did it have to happen to Goldberg? But I'd rather have it happen at a Super Showdown where a small percentage of the wrestling community is going to watch that on a Thursday afternoon, rather than have him lose to Cena or Roman or somebody else at WrestleMania in front of however many thousands of people.
But why does he have to lose either? Why doesn't he just beat Goldberg and then beat Cena, and now he becomes a big name?
Because the unfortunate truth is this. There is a very large majority of the wrestling fan base that is no longer watching professional wrestling. Bill Goldberg, for whatever people want to say, was one of the top stars during the Attitude Era. the belt on Goldberg, even at 50 some odd years of age, the belt on Goldberg's shoulder means more to have him carry it into WrestleMania than it does to have The Fiend carry it in at WrestleMania. And I know that's going to piss a lot of people off, and I know that's not what the internet fan base wants to see.
I would agree if the match was going to be Roman versus The Fiend. But if the match is going to be The Fiend versus Cena, if Cena's in that match and it's for the title, that's the main event. I'm sorry. I don't care if Goldberg's on there or if Brock is on there. And I'm not even saying this because Cena's a great wrestler. I'm saying this because the guy could come in and sell. Mm-hmm. You know, he could sell, and we know he can. So, and now that, you know, he's basically turning into Rock 2.0 in Hollywood, where he's doing all these movies and becoming a recognizable name outside of wrestling.
Yeah.
That's what's going to draw in the crowd, not Bill Goldberg. I'm sorry. He's not going to draw like Cena would.
He's not going to draw like Cena, but
So then why is he in the main event?
First of all, it's all speculation.
I get that.
It's all these matches that people are talking about. I mean, all these people that are reporting, oh, this was going to be this, that's going to be that. Plans have changed. This is all speculation. You could get a rematch between The Fiend and Goldberg. You don't know. If the one thing that I've learned with WWE especially and professional wrestling is to be patient and let the story play out. If you think back last year, right around the same time, how mad were people that Kofi Kingston wasn't going to be in the championship picture? What ended up happening? He won the title at WrestleMania. We were there, and it was one of the best stories leading into it. One of the most organic heavyweight championship wins in wrestling history. Daniel Bryan, same thing, another guy. All right, why didn't he win the Royal Rumble? Everybody's pissed off. They made it right. I'm not saying that they're going to have Bray Wyatt go on and win the championship or the title or anything like that at WrestleMania, but I'm just saying, let's pump the brakes. Let's see what's going to happen. He could lose the title at Elimination Chamber to somebody. It's happened before. We don't know if that's what's going to happen. They could have a rematch. I don't know. It's all speculation at this point, but all these people that are freaking out about Goldberg winning the championship, he's a transitional champion. He's 50 some odd years old. He's not going to hold the title for an extended period of time. And if Roman goes on and wins the title, imagine how big of a reaction The Fiend will get if he beats Roman for that title. Because it's still going to, whatever ends up happening, it's still going to be the same. Roman's always going to get that response from the fans. All he needs is the championship.
Because they do stuff like this.
But what are they supposed to do? I mean, anything.
I just told you, Cena versus The Fiend is what you do.
I understand that, but I'm talking about bigger picture stuff because everyone's like, they don't build new stars. Okay, they put the belt on Rollins. You guys shit on that. It's only a matter of time before it happens to Drew. They wanted to push Roman Reigns. People shit on that too. It's just fans are fickle. They don't know what they want. WWE gives you what you want, you get mad. They don't give you what you want, you get mad. It's like they're in a no-win situation, I feel like, no matter what they do.
Maybe.
They give you unpredictable, like today, people are still upset.
Well, let's hope that the big four marquee matches at WrestleMania are a sign of positive change to come for WWE, and that we see The Fiend go over Cena, Roman go over Goldberg, Drew go over Brock, and AJ go over The Undertaker. Let's hope that happens.
I do hope
and that makes
happens.
A big statement for WWE. But let us know in the comments what you thought about AEW Dynamite, NXT, and this horrible finish of Super Showdown in the comments below. Don't forget to share this all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPV Podcast. And for news, rumors, and conversations on all things pro wrestling, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. For Ralph Valenti, my name is Michael Valenti. Thank you for watching the Squared Circle Psychobabble.